It's Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. I'm your host, Sarah Mantle. We have a great show in store for you today. We're going to talk with Police Chief Paul McDonald about a drop in crime despite a recently released report by Neighborhood Scout. The latest real estate numbers are out for Barnstable County. We're going to get details from Register of Deeds Jack Mead. And we'll get some recycling tips from Energy Coordinator Richard Elrick. All of that on this episode of Barnstable Today. Now let's get a look at today's top headlines. The Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce is reaching out to small businesses by offering them a free shared workspace. Chief of Staff Chris Adams says it's a great resource for our community.
On the Cape, we have about 8,000 businesses, the vast majority of which are small businesses. So we're all about trying to come up with tools for small businesses to help them be successful. So what we created in the basement of our building is a co-working space, and we call it the Launch Pad. So essentially, it's a free space for members and non-members alike who are either starting a new business or small business owners that need a quiet place to work that has Wi-Fi and printers, or possibly have a small meeting with some folks from off Cape or whatever. We're in a convenient spot right off Route 6 at Exit 6. So really, we're all about getting small business people together, giving them some resources here at the Chamber that they can take advantage of.
To find out more about that shared workspace, you can contact the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. A new law allows private citizens to break car windows if they believe an animal is in distress. Animal Control Officer Charlie Lewis says there are some important signs of distress you should look out for.
If the dog is soaking wet and it's really panting, then it probably is a good indicator that it's in distress. Otherwise, it's really visual, and that's what makes this law difficult for me as an animal control officer to even envision being as it is. I think it's perfectly fine that a police officer, firefighter, or animal control officer be able to enter a vehicle should that animal be in distress, because we're trained in that area. As far as the ordinary citizen, that's a little different. You do have vet techs out there, and they certainly do know, so, it does give them. But the first thing that anyone has to do is make an honest effort to locate the owner and or keeper of that vehicle and or dog.
Lewis says finding the owner of the vehicle can save everyone a lot of time and money. If an owner cannot be located, Lewis still recommends contacting the proper authorities. Some changes are being made to Luke's Love Playground in West Barnstable. The goal of the project is to make the area safer for all users. Town officials will present revised plans to the Conservation Commission this week. Those plans have been revised to move the playground closer to the 50-foot buffer. The Conservation Commission meets Tuesday, January 17th at 3 in the Town Hall hearing room. The Water Resources Advisory Committee hopes to utilize a computer tool developed by the Cape Cod Commission. The tool will help the committee as it works to develop a wastewater resource management plan. The committee will schedule workshops to use the tool to help find the best solutions to reduce nitrogen loading in Barnstable's waterways. The Wastewater Resources Advisory Committee meets at 5:30 Wednesday, January 18th in the Town Hall hearing room. Up next, we'll chat with Police Chief Paul McDonald. Neighborhood Scout, a real estate search engine, recently released a number of figures, one of which put the town of the Barnstable in one of the worst crime areas in the country. To learn a little bit more about this and why that number may be a little bit skewed, we're going to talk with Police Chief Paul McDonald. Chief, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Doing very well. Want to get to the bottom of this. Let's talk a little bit about what this report from a neighborhood, I forget its name already. Where did these numbers come from, and why are they a little bit skewed?
Yeah, reading the article, and then I read the original email that went out, then I went onto their webpage to find out exactly what they're doing and how they come to their conclusions. It looks like they're basing their conclusions on the Part 1 crimes. Now, Part 1 crimes, every municipal law enforcement, every county, every state, every federal, every tribal, every university police officer are required to report your Part 1 crimes to first your state, and then they push them on to the FBI. We report ours on a monthly basis. We report them to the Fusion Center, and then from the Fusion Center, they're passed on to the FBI. And when you report them, you just can't report numbers. You have to report the reports that are attached to them to support your data. And they're talking about 2015, so you're going back a year and a half. So all of the data they're using, first of all, is very, very old. And if you look back then, our number of violent crimes in 2015 was 411. And if you break it down, the Part 1 crimes, they're murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Those are the crimes against the person. And then you have the 4 crimes against the property, which are burglary, theft, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson. And then if you read the article, go on their webpage, they're only using the first 4, the murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, to determine where you stand on this list. And for Barnstable, the total number was 411. Back in 2015, we had 2 murders, one on Washington Ave Extension and the other one up on Route 6. There were 23 rapes reported, 25 robberies reported, and there were 361 aggravated assaults, which gave us a total number of 411. And if you look at our numbers that we track very, very carefully, our numbers have progressively going down year after year after year. If you go back over a 5-year period, it was up to almost 1,500, and this year, the final year for 2016, we're down to, I believe, like 894. So they're down significantly. But then one thing, if you look at Neighborhood Scout, what they put in, they use that plus some sort of algorithm, and I'm not sure what that is, so I'm not sure how they come to a conclusion. But to say that Barnstable is more dangerous than Chicago or Compton, California, or Los Angeles, California, or New York City is ridiculous. So they're saying it's safer to be in Chicago than the Main Street Osterville or Main Street Cotulla, West Barnstable. It makes no sense whatsoever. But they do have a caveat. They clearly said that on their website, it says Neighborhood Scout does warn against the skewing of numbers in tourist areas, which means they're basing their numbers solely on the census of the town of Barnstable. They do not take into consideration the shoulder season. They do not take into account the season where our population easily goes up to 150 to 160,000. So these numbers are far from accurate. And if they're going to put out an article like that, they really have to do their homework to get the information correct, because this could affect a lot of people. It could affect the Chamber of Commerce, could affect business in downtown Hyannis. This really could have an adverse effect against the town, which is totally unfair.
And it's funny because looking at so many steps that have been taken, we have so many groups working very hard to deal with some of the major issues we have in town. The homelessness committee that was developed by the town council, so many other groups as well. I know the Hyannis Civic Association has been working very hard as a team on this, and so many things have made a difference. Those resource officers in the summer that were patrolling really made a big difference. So many people have been talking about some of the successes that we see here. And to read an article that almost compares what we have here in Barnstable to, say, Cincinnati, Ohio, is a little off. It just didn't feel quite right when I read the article. And I think you're right about those numbers being skewed, because our population goes up in the summer to quite significantly. Right.
But you have to look at the entire picture. You just can't look at the numbers. You have to also look at the community. Because the past 10 years that I've been the chief, is the one thing that we've been concentrating on is the Part 1 crimes. Back in 2008, 2009, we had somewhat of a history there where a lot of people were being injured, and we made some very purpose changes. We started the street crime unit. We opened up the Hyannis station because we wanted to change that, and we did. And the number of crimes have gone down dramatically. Over the years. Right now, it's the lowest it's been in 25 or 30 years. So how they come out with this outrageous statement is a little upsetting, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of it and find out exactly how they make their calculations, And if they're going to use a tourist community, then they have to equate something in that to figure out the real, true population. You just can't go by the census.
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this morning, digging in a little deeper to some of these numbers, because like you said, we're seeing a decline in our crime numbers. So we're going to still keep thank you so much for your hard work. Your department's hard work has made such a big difference. And of course, we didn't even mention the Marston's Mills substation.
Boston Mill substation. At the very least, they should go down there. They should talk to people on the street, talk to residents, talk to community leaders. Find out how they feel, what they feel about the crime. But it's been very disappointing. It's been a tough weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Chief, for breaking it down a little.
Sarah.
Maybe so we can understand it a little bit better. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you talking about it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Of course, our guest today, Police Chief Paul McDonald. Real estate market is showing some signs of growth. We're going to get details now with Register of Deeds, Jack Mead. Another great month for real estate in Barnstable County. Joining me now to discuss that further, I have Register of Deeds Jack Mead on the phone. Jack, this is really good news because last month we talked, it was a strong month as well. So what do we have here for December real estate numbers in Barnstable County?
Well, Sarah, it was we did have a strong month, as you mentioned. We were up almost 4% in terms of the volume of activity from over a year ago. As well, the total value was up nearly 5%, 4.7 to be precise. The end result was that the median value of property sales for the month of December was up 1.8% from a year ago. So, nice, strong, solid month, which followed up and ended up being a nice, strong, solid year for real estate here in Barnstable County.
Yeah, and that's pretty exciting for Barnstable County because for a while it seemed like that really wasn't the case. It was sort of a not really going anywhere. We weren't having some of these gains that we were seeing last year. Do you think this is going to continue into 2017?
I would hope so. I don't see a whole lot of reason why I wouldn't in terms of, interest rates have moved a little bit, but nothing's, spectacular in the wrong direction. So we're they're still low. The momentum, I would think, would continue to be there. 10% increase in volume over the year is a very strong increase. And you were correct in terms of saying the last, few years it's been okay, but it hasn't been, double digit or anything close to that. It's been lower single digit levels of increase. So we're seeing, I think, a little more solid, stable market in terms of just people getting a sense of, the correct value and having enough sales to go with it to get a sense of the value of the neighborhoods that they're buying in. And so I think that will help going forward for people making, accurate assessments of the market when they're doing their purchasing and putting their property up for sale.
Jack, I have to say I was pretty surprised by these such strong numbers in December because I typically think of December being a month when no one is really thinking about moving. They're not thinking about selling or buying. This is really, a holiday month. So were you surprised like I was at the strong numbers shown in December?
No, actually, December can be a pretty okay month. November can be slower sometimes for some reason, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But December can, there's this sort of desire to get, maybe if you're buying a second home to, be in there by the end of the year or whatever. And so a lot of that happens. The next 2-3 months will be relatively quiet. January, February, March are our 3 slowest months historically. And for, we'd measure the upside based on whether we're improving off of what we did last year. I think it'll be tough to improve off of last year. We had a strong beginning of the year. Last year we got off to a nice start. The lower end of the market was extremely active the first 4 or 5 months of last year. So that's really gave it. I think that's where we see our 10% increase plus in terms of volume was because the lower end of the market was much more active than it had been. So, when those houses, I don't know if you go around, I talk anecdotally to people, realtors, and they get, people are flooding those houses when they come up for sale. People are going to look. There's a lot of activity on that end of the market, and
So break that down for me. Why is that? Is that just because there's a greater need for homes in that price range, or is this investors coming in and saying, I'm going to snatch up this house, remodel it, and flip it for a profit?
Well, I think there's a combination. We had a significant period of, and we still have a bit of it, but we had a significant period of foreclosure activity in that end of the market. In a lot of areas, and so we had people sort of maybe over-committed mortgage-wise relative to home value, after after the prices came down, after the great adjustments period. And so I think what we're seeing is that a lot of those properties maybe are getting freed up, or at least people are getting away from the, out of the upside down position. And, if they wanted to move on or sell or whatever, they could get out of their mortgage and, move. Or so there were some properties that became available, and there was also some pent up demand out there, I think, for people. Once things got settled down a little bit, then people were in a position to buy. They had their finances in order, even the lenders and the appraisers and those folks had a better handle on, could they get a consistent, reasonable assessment of the value of these properties. And I mean, again, these are all it's a whole basket of things that people are looking at when that may be a cause for that level of activity. But my guess is that just things were settling down a little bit, after some turmoil for a number of years. And so, people still want to buy homes. They still want to live, raise families, et cetera. And people, most people aren't going to be in a position to start out buying a $500,000 house. So, you want to get started, you're going to start, at a house that's, in the quote-unquote affordable range, and theoretically that would be somewhere, in the twos and threes. And so, that means you're going to have a lot of folks, looking in that direction. And so I think there was that was the reason for our active market earlier, or one of the, among a number of reasons. But we just happened to all come together a little bit, early for that. And interestingly enough, our median sale price was below the year before up until I think May or June. So we were active, but the median price hadn't gone over where it had been at that point the year before until, say, June, and that's where we started to see maybe the higher-end second home market pick up and start to bring our median price up to where it is now, where, at the end of the year, where the median price is up really 3% from where it was a year ago, but, which is better than the other alternative. But if you look our last 5 or 6 months, our median price has moved from, in January it was $315, and in December it's $350. So, wow. Again, that's a function of activity too. I mean, January, February, March, our median price is lower, but we also have a lot fewer deals going on. So that's going to bring your odds are, if as I said, the activity is on the lower end, your median is going to pull your median down some. And then as the market starts to heat up, or more people looking at a summer home or whatever, the price they're looking at a higher end home, that brings the medium up.
Very interesting point, and something we'll have to keep into consideration when we start talking about real estate numbers for January, February, March. Like you said, these are going to be pretty slow months. And interesting, too, that you said last year was so successful. So we'll have to remember in the next few months when we chat again that we could see lower numbers, and that may not be such a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, right. There's, as they say, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? So
right.
You got to be careful. Everyone says, "Oh, you're down," and you're like, "Well, it's all relative,"
right.
When you have to put it in context, and with some hard numbers, and when you look and you go, "Well, that, a 10% drop in January may be that you did 10 fewer sales than you did the year before,"
right.
And in the grand scheme, when you're doing, over 8,000 sales in a year, January, February, March are not the months you look at to be your savior, or the opposite. They're the slowest quarters, and even if they're good, they're really not going to impact significantly the year totals.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and breaking all those statistics down for us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Take care, Sarah.
All right,
appreciate
you as
it.
well. Talk to you
soon.
All
right, bye-bye.
Our guest today, Register of Deeds, Jack Mead. Now let's get the do's and don'ts of recycling with Energy Coordinator Richard Elrick. We all know it's very important to recycle, but sometimes we want to make sure we're following the rules. Here to talk more about that, Energy Coordinator Richard Elrick. Richard, some of the things that I have a lot of questions surrounding recycling. Just, when I'm getting down to sorting things and putting things in the recycle bin, sometimes I just wonder about the process. So I want to ask you a few questions about
Sure.
that. Make sure I'm following all of the rules so that all of the things I recycle can be used.
I think that's admirable, Sarah.
So one of the things that I do when I go to the dump is I collect a lot of my items for recycling in a little Trader Joe's paper bag that can also be recycled. So I've sort of made a habit. It's very easy to take that Trader Joe's recycling bag and huck it into the bin. Is that okay, or do I need to take that time to dump those items out in and maybe crumple up the paper bag and throw it in?
Yeah, I think so. The Trader's Joe bag that you use is a paper bag, so that's a good first step for me to understand in the story. Because certainly, if you were describing a plastic bag, I'd say absolutely empty everything out of that plastic bag, because plastic bags, as we've heard from all of the different recycling facilities that are out there that do this kind of work, it's the plastic bags that really gum up the mechanism of the sorting machine. So knowing that it's not plastic bags, I would still urge you to empty it out because it makes the whole sorting process a little bit more efficient. But and again, what you're going to be putting in to your bag, what's going to be received by the what they call a MRF, Municipal Recycling Center, or facility, I should say. Ultimately, it's going to be separated in the process. Plastics go one place, of course, metals go somewhere else, paper goes somewhere else, and this all happens through the use of magnets and optical sensors and different strength wind that blows up through the recycled materials as they go along my mind is going blank.
Conveyor belt.
A conveyor belt, thank you. So the end result is that if you put the paper in it, into the process, it probably isn't going to be a big deal, but still it would make it a little bit more efficient if you just emptied those materials out and then threw the bag in after the fact.
Well, and that won't take very
'Cause
much
it's single
time
stream.
either.
Right.
But just want to make sure that I'm doing things properly. So one of the things that I get stuck on when I'm at my home and I'm throwing things in the recycling bin is, when you finish up that plastic container of Tide, and it is tough to get all of that soap out of the container. So I'll struggle for a little bit. I'll rinse it out with water. How clean does that need to be for it to be recycled?
We've talked to the New Bedford Waste Services, the company that handles our recycling, and they say just do your best, and then you can still toss those plastic containers with the soap residue at the bottom. The great majority, of course, of the containers is going to be fine, and even to the degree that there's soap residue left over, in the process of transforming those plastic containers back into the essential plastic elements, most of those impurities, if not all of them, will come out. So it's not a huge deal.
So,
but it makes the process
sometimes
again,
I've been like, maybe I shouldn't recycle this because it's so soapy. So rather, it would be better to go ahead and recycle that and make sure I'm not throwing it away.
Absolutely. But again, that does get back to the issue of how clean do we want our cans and our glass receptacles to be before we essentially try to recycle. And again, you want to do your best because to the degree that you've got impurities, if there's extra food product in there, it sort of gums up the works. It has the potential to negate the quality and the value of it. So if you've got a lot of wet material inside your containers and that's getting mixed in with the paper product, it's degrading the quality of the paper. So that's really the goal here. They're trying to make sure that the recyclables that we dispose of are as pristine as we can possibly make them because it increases the value of the product. That's what we're hearing now from all of these MRF facilities, is that they really are trying to get folks to be better recyclers because it increases the value of the product and makes recycling easier to sell to people if there's real value in it, and we want to make sure that continues to be the case.
So to continue on the trend, breaking down each little thing, because sometimes my thing is I don't want to throw something away because I think it cannot be recycled. So when it comes to glass jars, say maybe pasta sauce, do I need to scrape the label off, or is that unimportant?
No, you can leave the label on. We get a lot of questions to that effect, and again, our MRF advises us no problem with the labels. They'll come off naturally as part of the process of recycling.
I use a lot of stapled paper here
Yeah.
at work. So
Yeah, we all do.
One of the things I've been doing at work, Richard, is taking the staple and ripping off the corner and throwing it in the trash can. Do I need to do that, or can I just throw my stapled papers right into the recycling bin?
I'm not going to advise you to do something that not do something that you've been doing. That's fine, but you don't need to remove the staples. Again, by and large, as process evolves, as the recycling and sorting in the MRF takes place, staples are not an issue, haven't been an issue. They don't come up the works, and they get separated from the paper in a way that it doesn't reduce the value of the recyclable commodity, and which is just what it is. It's a commodity.
What about pasta boxes? A lot of pasta boxes have this little window in the corner of the box with a little plastic film on it so you can kind of see the pasta. Every time I think to myself, do I need to take the extra step and rip off that plastic piece? Maybe a Kleenex box has the same thing. Do I need to rip off the plastic before I throw that Kleenex box or that pasta box into the recycling bin?
Sarah, you are one committed recycler. I'm impressed. That's good. You don't have to. You don't have to cut away that plastic. In the grand scheme of things, as the process, recycling and sorting process plays itself out, that really isn't an issue. It gets separated from the paper and doesn't really have a negative impact on the value of the product. So I wouldn't concern myself with that. I'd throw it all the cardboard, even with the little plastic in it.
Awesome. So now I feel like, oh, and one last question, I guess,
Yes.
to ask you really quickly. What about textiles? So I have a lot of clothes, some of which I don't think I can donate to Goodwill. They're just a little bit, worn. So really not something I can pass on to someone. Can I recycle those textiles?
Absolutely. We actually, at our transfer station in Marston's Mills, we have a number of different containers that are suitable for disposing of recyclables. And of course, as you point out, the real high quality textile items, whether it's clothing of some kind or really anything, that'll get sorted out. So they'll keep the good stuff, and everything else that really isn't suitable to be reworn, the material, the fibers in that fabric can be used. So we do recycle fibers, textiles of all kinds. Very, very important.
Where would I drop that off at the transfer station?
As you enter into the recycling area of the transfer station, the textile drop-off containers are on the right, currently sort of close to where the swap shop is, and fairly near to where the compost pile is located as well.
Great. Well, thank you. Now I feel like I am an expert recycler. I really appreciate you stopping by and clearing up a lot of issues for me.
My pleasure, Sarah.
My guest today, Richard Elrick, Energy Coordinator for the town of Barnstable. Now let's take a look at what's happening around town in today's community calendar. Musicians will have an opportunity to play out at the Craigville Coffee House Open Mic Night. The event is being hosted by musician Kim Moberg at the Centerville Public Library this Thursday, January 19th. Performers are asked to sign up at 5:30. There is no fee to participate. Donations of canned foods will be accepted and collected for a local food pantry. Well, thank you for tuning in today. That's pretty much it for us today. We'll be back here with a full show for you tomorrow. We're going to talk to CEO of the Greater Hyannis Chamber of Commerce, Jessica Silver. We're also going to talk with Finance Director Mark Milne and, of course, have all the news and information you need. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mantle.